Good evening and welcome to another edition of This Week in 60 Minutes. I'm your host, Roodi Balgobin.
Hi, I'm Nalini, and the focus this week will be the uncertainty about the move forward.
Before we progress with our topic, let me just say good night and welcome to those of you joining us on Facebook as well. I'm not sure if we have the live stream up as yet. We're experiencing some technical difficulties. Also, before we got into the discussion, I'd just like to draw viewers' attention to the bottom of your screens. You'll be seeing some scrolls going across there. Those are some of the promises from the People's Progressive Party. I'd urge you guys to pay keen attention to those. They're very important messaging from the party, what they intend to do after the upcoming elections or the impending elections.
Before we get into those, though, we would just like to, the party has put out a statement extending their heartfelt energies towards the people of the Bahamas and would like to call on the government to once again offer aid to these people at this time.
Yes, very important messaging. We urge all Guyanese to assist in any way they can, especially the government of Guyana, to assist our Bahamian brothers and sisters who have suffered this tragedy after Hurricane Dorian recently. Now, to get into our topic, and the most discussed topic, I would like to say, on this program, is GCOM and their pending decision, basically, to have an elections. The uncertainty seems to be the order of the day at the moment following the last statutory meeting of the Guyana Elections Commission, which took place on Tuesday. However, this meeting was described by the commissioners as wasted days, irrelevant discussions, failure to come to any meaningful discussions. As I said earlier, those were the key discussions coming out of yesterday's meeting. A meeting that saw no final resolution on the way forward or bringing us any closer to the constitutionally due elections.
Well, we're hoping that there's a meeting set for Friday, so hopefully at this meeting there's something positive that comes out of it. But aside from that, there's a lot that's still unclear at this time.
Yes, definitely a lot of uncertainty in the air. We'll be going through a lot of those coming up on the program. That meeting that you speak of would be at 11 a.m., sorry, of the commission. So we're hoping that some sort of decision and some sort of clarity will be coming from that meeting. However, as we move on into our discussion of GCOM, the key things that they are currently discussing is the cross-matching of fingerprints, which were garnered from the recently abandoned house-to-house registration exercise that was ongoing. In the exercise, the GCOM would have put out their status saying that they have garnered 370,822 persons registering in the 6-week cycle that they conducted.
A little more and they'd finish the whole again.
Well,
when it takes 6 months usually, right?
The current database is only 666 plus thousand people.
And that took how long?
And in just 6 weeks, we have half of that being captured in just 6 weeks. And when they did the house, then it took about a year, 2 years, I think.
A little over a year, I think it was, and then to do all the cross-matching and issue ID cards, it took almost 2 years or so. So they are a very efficient team, apparently.
Very, very efficient. That is why many from the People's Progressive Party has been arguing that the data is flawed in some way or the other. Now, moving on from that, the cross-matching of the data, this is where they would extract the fingerprints and then cross-match it against the ones currently in the database to ensure that we do not have duplicates. Because, as we pointed out earlier, it's a criminal offense.
And people were re-registered because that was a part of the GCOM ad and so on. They were like, you need to be re-registered.
Or you'll go to jail and be fined and stuff like that. Basically threatening people to re-register. So at the moment, we have from GCOM saying that they're still in communication as it relates to costs with certain outside companies to conduct this service. And for them to do it themselves, they have put out a timeline of 30 days to get the cross-matching done. However, they would need to first acquire an ABIS system It's a software that extracts the fingerprints and to cross-references with those already in the database. And that is at a cost of $1,140,000 US.
Wow.
Of course, that was not budgeted for in 2019. So
maybe they'll have an emergency budget.
Again, we're still unsure how is it that GCOM is going to pay for this
Fund
system
everything?
or fund this. All the while they're still in talks with other companies that has done it before for Guyana on the
Companies that would
cost.
have all the other records already too.
Yes.
So
Mhm.
that's another thing that we need to look at. They need to re-input all these things. Too.
However, they did put that, and they said that the timeline on this would be about 12 days, which is highly questionable because GCOM locally still has to dispatch the fingerprints from the house registration to this company because they would not have
Yeah,
access
they
to
have
that.
to send it
And
over.
they have said nothing about how long this will take them to do or anything. So they just put forward some ad hoc figures and days and
And
everything.
also, if there's like a problem with the fingerprint, so like let's say when they were taking my fingerprint, it rolled,
Mhm.
they'll send it back, and you'll have to redo it and then resend it. So it's gonna be a whole few months.
So
Okay.
the merger of the data, that's one side as it pertains to the merger of the data, and already we can see minimum 1 month to get just the cross matching of this data done. The other aspect of it is ID cards. However, the commission is now hell-bent,
Yeah.
or the secretariat rather, is hell-bent on reprinting ID cards for everyone in the database, not just the new registrants.
But all 750,000 people,
Yes.
so I'm guessing there's a few people that are underage. They're probably gonna get these.
Yeah, well,
I don't know how they're doing
that's
that.
how they plan
I mean-
to do this.
I mean, logically, when you look at it, during a normal election cycle, there's claims and objections,
Mhm.
and there isn't enough time sometimes when you claim, let's say I claim on the last day,
Mhm.
and I got myself on a list. I won't have an ID card, so I will vote without an ID, but my picture will be there in the folio.
Yes.
So there is no need really, it's kind of a waste of resources to reprint ID card. I mean, personally, I'd like to change my picture, and some people might too.
I think a lot of people share that sentiment
But
as well.
it's just like taxpayer dollars once again being
Mhm.
wasted, like at house to house.
And the most important part of it is another delay tactic because GCOM said that the production of ID cards by themselves would take over 5 weeks,
So that's a month and a bit.
a month and a bit. So already we
On
have 2
borrowed
months,
time and
two
more
months
time.
For them to just get this data into the NRR.
Yeah.
And if they're going to go with outside sources, which they're also considering, that will take. They're not sure how long it will take
Oh.
for them to
But-
get that finished.
Claudette Singh in 1997 did rule that ID cards
Mhm.
were not necessary. So why this sudden push for a new ID card?
Very important. She's now the chairman of the Guyana Elections Commission. She was then the judge in the Esther Pereira case.
Yes.
And if she knew that then, I'm quite sure that she would know this now and could make a decision and get this shenanigans.
Yeah, hopefully she
out
does
of
the
way.
same thing and squash that too.
Mhm.
But what I want to read to you is the EU report. The EU in 2001, an observer reporter said, in 1998, Esther Pereira, a PNC supporter, petitioned the High Court to set aside the results of the 1997 general election. Justice Claudette Singh found that the requirement for voters to have a voter ID card in 1997 was ultra vires, Articles 59 and 159 of the Constitution, despite a consensual parliamentary agreement to use the card. So the entire House agreed to that.
Yes.
Consequently, the elections were therefore null and void.
Yes, I think everyone is au fait with what happened there, but I don't think a lot of people pay attention to that aspect of her ruling
Yeah.
and what the EU observer report is saying there, that she herself understood then that it's not necessary to
Yeah,
have an
because our
ID
laws
card to vote.
doesn't say that because
Mhm.
you can vote with your passport too.
Mhm.
That's a valid form of ID, and you could vote without because your picture, your image is there in the
Mhm.
database.
You would just have to get a sworn statement,
sometimes-
and so
If you show up without and they can in the folio, you're fine.
yeah, once you get a verification from
Yeah,
all the
from all the
present in the
the
polling
scrutineers
stations,
and
yeah.
who so forth.
Additionally, as it relates to the ID cards, is that GCOM is still unsure of how or when and how long it will take to procure the polycarbonate cards that the ID is printed on. Also, they,
So the company doesn't provide that for them?
well, that's if they're going with an outside company, they still have to source that somewhere else. So that's another time they have
So
to
find
wait.
another company to
Yes,
do
another
thing.
company to source just the plastic card, the polycarbonate card that you would have your ID on. That's another time to get that and procure it and go through all of that.
They don't know the timelines for
They
that.
don't know the timelines for that. And if they're going to do it themselves, which they say will take over 5 weeks, they still have to procure printers because we don't have printers
And the
apparently.
same plastic thing to
And
print
the same
on.
plastic, and then the time to set it up, and the time to go through the printing.
Yeah, and
all
regardless
this.
of and trial and error, because this will be the first time they're doing this, so
Mhm.
they probably have to go through a trial and error
Yeah,
period.
they actually accounted for a period of training and trial
Okay.
and working and back and forth.
But with all of that, though, is the other part is the distribution of the cards, because at
They're
GCOM
unaware
office,
or they have no plan
system-
thus far how they would then distribute these cards.
At all 29 GCOM offices, they are cards sitting there for people to pick up from
Mm-hmm.
2015 elections and so on.
So what we're really getting at right now is that this merger of the data will take us farther and farther into the end of this year, and yet we are no clearer on when we will have an elections, if we will have an elections this year, or what really is taking place. And GCOM
Let's
just
be positive and hope that there's going to be one sometime November.
well, I am hoping that
Everyone happy.
well, I'm hoping at Friday's meeting, having regards to the things that we have just highlighted,
Yeah.
that the chairman would, also realize these things and realize that the no confidence motion was passed. We should have had an election since March 21st, and as a result, we need to get moving. We
Yeah.
can't just meet every week and say, oh, we'll meet later in the week to decide
Because
things.
we're running out of time, basically,
Mhm.
because September 18th is.
It's already 250 plus days that
Yeah.
the no confidence motion was passed, and yet no elections
We're going to
in
get
Guyana.
a year period. You
Um,
have
more importantly, another key point of her judgment back in 1997, Justice Claudia Singh, at page 26 of the judgment in the Esther Pereira case, Justice Claudia Singh issued the following firm but admirable reprimand, and I quote, "No political party can aggregate onto itself the power to barter away or waiver the constitutional right of members of the electorate. The voice of the members of the electorate to speak through the ballot cannot be silenced by arrogant agreements among political parties. Even Parliament cannot do so, since the voice of the members of the electorate to speak through the ballot is a constitutional right under Article 59. So having regards to what I've just read, I think it is very important that these should be considered now, having a no confidence motion
Yeah,
being
that's-
passed, and elections was supposed to happen months ago, and we're still here
We're
waiting.
still waiting for the president to dissolve parliament and give us this election date.
Mm.
Shouldn't these considerations stand now, like all being said, especially because you are now the chairman of this body, and based on your rulings from-
Exactly, your own words back then. I think, but the key point is here that it all boils down to the GCOM must uphold the Constitution. They must act in an urgent manner.
Yeah, and
And to realize the urgency of the situation that we are faced with as Guyanese. Through our elected members of parliament, the population has declared that they have no confidence in this government.
Yeah.
And this is something that's throughout the world.
yeah,
throughout
it
the
happens
world.
all over. Like you saw England threatening that, but because of their new laws, they didn't have the time period for that. And I think you said the election date was cancelled. The vote
Yeah.
got shut down. We were looking at it. But even in that country, they were able to say, okay, if this vote passes tonight, we can have elections by October 18th.
October 18th.
Yeah, see, so they were able to thing it. So back to our Constitution, Article 8, the Constitution, Article 8 of the Constitution of Guyana. The Constitution is our supreme law, and if any other law is inconsistent with it, that other law shall, to be the extent of inconsistency, be void. So the parts of the law that is inconsistent with our law will then just be striked down. So right now we are having cases with the ID cards. Maybe we don't need them, like in the sense. she was saying in Esther
Yeah.
Pereira, that we just
Exactly.
get the people that are registered, we get the folio going, and we go to an election.
Very importantly, as everyone has known, we keep highlighting this point here on this program because it's very important to keep hammering home the point that Ghana's highest court has also pronounced on this matter. That
Yeah.
is, of course, the Caribbean Court of Justice. And the CCJ on July 12, 2019 said that the Guyana Elections Commission has the responsibility to conduct that elections, and GCOM too must abide by the provisions of the Constitution. So while the president hides behind the facade that, oh, GCOM is a constitutional agency and they have to do their thing, GCOM themselves must realize that they too are bound by the Constitution.
Yeah.
They are created by the Constitution. They're all sworn in there to uphold the Constitution. And the Constitution at Article 106 is quite clear. Article 106 of the Constitution invests in the President and the National Assembly and implicitly in GCOM the responsibility that impact on the precise timings of the elections which must be held. And that precise timing
3
that
months
speak of
period,
is
yeah.
3 months. And we are far, far, far away from that.
We're a few 3 months away.
Past that right now. And GCOM is just meeting every day, next day.
Without a decision.
And
I think
without
it was
any
fruitless, and
Yeah.
what was the quotes they were saying?
A
Waste of my
time and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Also, the court said that these bodies and personage will exercise their responsibility with integrity and in keeping with the unambiguous provisions of the Constitution, bearing in mind that the no confidence motion was validly passed as long as the 21st of December 2018. So here again we have the Caribbean Court of Justice reminding GCOM
Yeah.
and the political actors, more so the government,
Yeah.
that there was a no confidence motion passed since the 21st.
Yeah.
Election should have been held 3
Well-
months thereafter. We didn't have that, but that does not mean that we don't need elections anymore.
What was interesting too with the whole going to the CCJ was we also had a pronunciation on our GCOM chairman then, Pattison,
Mhm.
who when he left this lovely Stabrook editorial poison chalice for them to run with,
Mhm.
which was the house-to-house thing.
And again, we had to go to court to get that
to get
stuff.
that, exactly.
Mhm.
The other issue was there is no finality in the use of the data garnered from this new house-to-house.
Mhm.
Last week we talked about concerns about the decisions to merge the data collected with the National Register of Registrants. One, it's gonna delay elections, as you were pointing out, all these
Yes.
timelines
Mhm.
and so on. It's going to contaminate the National Register of Registrants if there's anyone that's a duplicate by mistake. Let's say I previously registered and I was telling Steve I'd injured my finger, so my fingerprints have changed, so that wouldn't be picked up.
Mhm.
Wrong forms were used and non-statutory forms were used, and we highlighted all the differences.
Just last week,
Yeah.
I think
One
you had
thing
about
was-
12 points.
Yeah, it was like
difference.
5 new things on this new form and 1 thing removed from the old form, and there was no scrutiny. Because of the way elections were in the past, pre-92 period,
Mhm.
they came up with a system where we've had two major political parties, and they both have scrutineers to see the registration and ensure it's done properly. Like I come to you and I make sure I copy all your information accurately, and then a PNC and a PPP person will say, okay, this is fine.
Mhm. And then
Well,
they both signed that form,
Exactly.
which we highlighted last
That
week.
only
as
the
well.
PNC
Mhm.
has been signing.
Mhm. And in some cases, they haven't even been signing.
Yeah,
for
because I
certain
don't think they
persons.
probably even have for all the areas too, because
Mhm.
I don't know if they were properly informed, but the PPP wasn't, because
They weren't
Zulfi-
even invited
Yeah,
to
they
partake
were
in
formally
this.
invited. Zulfi serves as the chief scrutineer for the People's Progressive Party.
Mhm.
He's the executive secretary, and he wasn't formally invited, which is
Mhm.
the process that was supposed to happen.
Mhm.
In last week, there was nothing to be said about this, and the only logical decision, though, would be GCOM to go to a claims and objection period.
Very important that you bring up the claims and objection. This is something that from day one, the People's Progressive Party has been talking about. That the way to get to an official list of electors, the OLE, which you then use to think, the best way is to do a claims and objection,
Yeah, but
which would have been completed months ago,
So
mind you.
So we need to just point out, though, you first have to have a preliminary list of electors, which you extract
From the NRR, of course, and then
then we go to a claims and
Yes,
objection.
very important.
So
Mhm.
do you want to?
Yeah, but as you were talking about the list the NRR will become contaminated, I'd just like to
Yeah,
point out
yeah.
a few things based on some research that we did earlier. And I'll just give you one area. GCOM said in their release and in their document that in the Lagrange office, that is the GCOM Lagrange office, within the 6 weeks, they were able to register a total of 21,172 persons. However, and anyone can check this, these data are available on the GCOM website.
Yeah.
As of 2018, persons registered to vote in that same Lagrange district.
So there's 29 GCOM stations, and each station does a few areas.
Yeah.
So we looked at all the areas that Lagrange would
Names and Potentia, Bagersville, and all these places that encompasses that Lagrange station.
Yeah.
So as of 2018, at the last local government elections, there was a total of 13,578 persons who were registered to vote. And now GCOM is claiming that they have registered 21,172 persons within that locality. Even if everyone was re-registered, that gives off a difference of 7,954 persons, new registrants within that district alone. 7,594 persons, new persons register, and this would be persons from the ages of 14 and above in that area, is very, very questionable.
But
and
the area itself, though, not a lot of people would have re-registered based on the calls that the PPP have been making.
That's also true. But even so, we're giving them the benefit of the doubt. We'll
So
give
everyone
the
re-registered.
even if everyone re-registered, the full 13,578 persons re-registered, 7,000 persons plus or almost 8,000 being captured there is highly unlikely. It is definitely questionable, and that is why Nalini was speaking earlier that this data is flawed, is questionable.
Maybe a lot of people moved into this area. Reading tree is getting popular.
I do hope that is the case.
No, Region 4 tends to be where people migrate to.
So that is all we have as of now as it relates to GCOM and the elections. I know a lot of people has been messaging everyone that they know, they've been talking to, and I also like to point out that all of our party leaders are currently on the ground meeting with people in all the villages across Guyana, conducting...
Tonight your fans at Fowles.
Yeah, conducting house-to-house meeting. Yes, our presidential candidate is currently in Fowles and more area conducting a house-to-house meeting. And we're on the ground. And the most common question when you go to these house-to-house meetings, people wants to know when would be the elections? And the very next thing they ask you, so we have provided, look, first let me deal with that. We have provided all we have at hand, what is available to us as it relates to when elections would be, what GCOM is doing.
So we'll know more on Friday, so hopefully next week we have some good news.
Exactly, hopefully next week we'll have some better news for you, but as it stands right now, no decision has been made, no clarity, we're no closer to an election. GCOM is still to meet and decide on what they're doing.
And Steve is about to tell us what everyone's asking him at these bottom house meetings. He's very popular at them.
Well, thank you. And the very next question after they would persons would ask you when would be the elections is, what is it that the PPP intends?
This is their third question. Their first question is, are you Roodi Balgobin?
So their next question would be, what is it that the PPP intends to do in the future for Guyana, for Guyanese, and for everyone as it relates to them being in the new government and everything. So quickly, I'd like to just go through a few of the promises. And I started off the program by telling you guys to pay attention to your screens at the bottom. We have some scrolls here. So one of the very important things that the PP has promised, first off, is to support small business with grants and interest-free loans. We know that, and I saw reports in the newspapers on various newscasts that a lot of Guyanese businesses have closed their door after the 2015.
But you can see it too. You see all these small shops being taxed, like the lady where I buy custard from, she no longer operates a shop. You just literally have to call her and be like, I'm coming over to buy things because they're coming to ask for taxes and so on. So what part of it is to have small grants, loans, trainings, and I think women entrepreneurship will receive special attention.
Yes, the presidential candidate, I think, did an entire program on that, addressing those concerns, specifically dealing with women. And that. Another important thing is that the PPP promised to reduce the cost of living, and as Nalini was pointing out, one of those contributing factors is taxes.
Yeah.
The heavy taxation policy of the government.
Well, the PP's always been pro-poor and always like we've moved the country
Well, it's
forward.
a working class party. It was
Exactly.
started as a working class
Because
party.
we moved out of being a low-income country to a middle-income country, and I think we're kind of like sliding backwards.
Yeah, we just keep reversing and going backwards all the time.
Depleting.
Yeah.
Like we can see with the resources.
The other one has been making quite the waves on social media
Yeah.
and among everyone in particular in the country.
Especially Steve's friends.
Yeah, the PP is promising that there will be no more 2 a.m. curfew, so a total removal of the 2 a.m.
You saw a lot of
curfew.
places close down. You saw Buddy's close down, which you probably never would think closed down. Gravity closed. Jerry's, oh yes, that would be amazing for food. At,
Been in existence for over like 10, 12 years in existence.
Probably more than that.
Probably more than I've
went
known
to
it for
high
10, 12
school
years.
10 years ago, and they were old then. So
When a business like that is closed, it tells you seriously how an economy is performing and what is really going on in the economy. Another one is cheaper, more reliable electricity. I know everyone is looking forward to this. Now, everyone might be, how are we going to achieve this? One of the major
the
projects.
hydro projects,
Yes,
right?
that is
Remember
what I
that
was
one was
getting
supposed
at.
to come online, I think,
In
last
2018,
year.
yes.
Yeah.
We would have, had they not cut the budget and stopped this project, we would have already had a hydro plant, at the Amaila Hydro plant, and it would have been producing electricity for us. And we wouldn't have embarrassing situations like what took place last night, and the night before, where the National Stadium, all the way from the airport coming down in total darkness. It's becoming an embarrassment.
Well, there's cases where people are like, you see memes that, do you have a generator? I'll date you then.
Yes, it's totally just an embarrassment now for a country when you go
I
overseas.
don't remember us having this much blackout pre-2015, and it's just because they changed the whole system of the way GPL was managed by Warstill, and they made their own company kind of thing. So
the PPDI company, yes, we all know of that.
Another thing was to give back the school cash grants. So I think a lot of people are going back to school today with a little less money in their pockets because it's getting tighter. You see people, I saw a few articles about men stealing, and they were explaining to judges, I got children to send to school.
Yeah,
so just sad.
That is something that the leader of the opposition constantly talks about at his press conference.
Yeah.
They took away the money from the 10,000 cash grants from the school children, and then they basically added to government for porks. So dietary has increased by 1 point something
Their
billion.
salary alone has blown up. So
well, they give themselves hefty salary, and then additional to that, they keep adding money for things like local travel and subsistence. And we know they've been traveling all around the country, promising people
but they don't
and
travel
lying
alone.
to people.
They travel in an entourage.
An entire entourage.
They have
and
bodyguards.
Of course, they're eating more in government. 1 point something more billion dollars. They're eating more in government. Something that has been plaguing us as well since 2015 is the loss of jobs. And the PPP has promised 50,000 new jobs over the 5-year period, which is on average 10,000 jobs per year, which is being promised. So students that have come out of UG now, I see a lot of people
that was a part of
complain.
Grinch's promise, right?
Which they never.
He went back on.
They went back on.
So the promise of jobs too is like you see the people who've done it before. You get investors to come in. They've got to the Marriott, Movie Town. Those places all have provided jobs, so they've done it before, can do it again. And one of it is to reopen Sugar Estate, so that'll bring back some jobs.
Another very important promise.
Re-employ the CSOs in the hinterland and so on to continue doing the land titling and all those things too. Something that I want to point out is that part of it is to bring assistance to the rice industry, but that's legally and it's mandated to the rice board to do that, to develop the rice industry. It's part of their mandate, and to conduct research to help with that. So part of their mandate in 2014, they knew paddy bug was a problem and it was becoming more and more of a problem because it wasn't getting better, it was getting worse, like the bugs were increasing. So they set aside $90 million. They had a study chaired by Dr. Leslie Monroe and headed by an entomologist, Dr. Vivian who's still at the rice board. So there was no need for them to bring in someone to then tell them oh, you just have to spray now. Because you have all these people, you have learned people that have this program set aside, you have money set aside for the farmers, and none of this was done. They just kind of like shelved it.
Well, we all know the position of the government as it relates to rice. The president
Yes.
himself said when the rice farmers started experiencing problems that, oh, rice is a private business, so
Yes.
it has nothing to do with the government. Basically, you guys are on your own.
Something I heard the other day is senior members at the rice board that were put there by the government are saying things like rice farmers are PP supporters or they're making it up. So
Oh yeah, I've actually heard that. Don't believe them. There's no paddy
There's no
bugs,
paddy bugs.
and they're just making all this stuff up.
yeah, so
Quite interesting. Some of the other promises is reverse VAT on building materials.
restoring of bonuses to the joint services. I
Yes,
think
I'm sure.
that was always like something they looked forward to.
At the end of the
especially
year.
at Christmas.
Mhm.
Like, and then if you look at it, the joint services are now working harder than ever because they have to, every time you see Gringy going somewhere, you see police lined up on the roads.
Yeah, and of course, another thing that we need to look at is strengthening security and building safer communities, which also speaks directly to the joint services.
Yeah, it
and
does. Well, it also speaks to a lot of other people, like our minister, Cameron Rambutan, who says the crime is a fabrication of the media. What was it?
yeah, it's the media need to be careful on how they report
Yeah.
on these things
Steve.
because we are basically responsible for the crime wave and what the perception of persons out there. Another promise from the PP is end prescription drug shortages, something
Yeah.
that's plagued us since 2015 to date. If you go to many of the health centers across Guyana in the
public
rural
hospital too.
areas in particular, and of course, yeah, the public hospital, there are
Insulin shortage, you have people with hypertension who can't get tablets. And then another part of it is they're banning certain hospitals and private institutions from bringing in people to their imports. So there's a lot of like iffiness with this. So hopefully
well, yeah, as
we
soon
can end this very soon because it's not, we need a healthy population, right? Part of a developing country getting better is your healthy population, and then your life expectancy goes up and so on.
As it relates to another segment of Guyanese, there is also a promise to reverse the new taxes that applies to Guyanese minors. So it's not just about rice and sugar and opening thing.
It's
There's
for
something
everywhere.
in the manifesto for everyone.
Yeah, I think it's
and
reverse
for
VAT
everybody.
on forestry, mining, and farming equipment.
Yes, that is also another promise. So it's
Yeah.
everyone that stands to benefit. We know that.
And we're going to reverse the VAT on exports because why are you putting VAT on something you're selling? You're taxing yourself again, like it's double taxing.
Well, as we mentioned earlier, the only way the government can get all this money to spend is to tax the population because, as we
You
pointed
can
out,
only
they're
squeeze a
spending.
sponge so much.
Yes, so they're just extracting as much as they can out of us. For a few of them in office to live comfortable and to live the good life that they keep claiming that
They
they're
promised
giving the
us
Guyanese
all,
people.
and we voted for them on that promise, and then, well, hey, the good life wasn't for us.
Yeah.
So, free university is something else too that was promised by the PPP for this. If
Now,
elected.
not to get too excited, I think this one needs a bit of
Yeah, because
explanation
it's
as
a
well.
gradual
Yeah,
thing.
with the oil industry that is set to come on stream in early 2020 and the monies that we're going to garner from there, the leader of the opposition explained that this would not be a day one
No,
project.
it
It
would
would
be
be
a-
over a 3 to 5 year project.
Yeah.
But within the first 5 years of the first term of a new PPC administration in office, you would see
But I
free.
think part of it too is the move to
University
online
education.
and so on. So it'll be like a gradual, like okay, these courses free, and then so
Mhm.
on until the whole system becomes free. As Steve says, as the revenues go up, costs go down until the cost becomes zero.
Exactly. Another very important one is no VAT on healthcare. They
Oh.
currently have to pay VAT on prescription drugs. On,
More than that, on anything in the healthcare industry. So like needles and these things that people need for things like dialysis, insulin, these people.
yeah, so you can see a reversal on that as well. Of course, government support for single parents. As Nalini was
Yeah.
pointing out, women
Entrepreneurship is
have a special
place.
special space carved out for women as it relates to their needs and
Yeah, there's
as well.
also going to be like a daycare thing for working moms, was one of the ads that we've been seeing posting around. So all of these are going to be in tune for a part of the manifesto. These are just small snippets from the manifesto. The full thing will be available once an election date is announced, and there's going to be a launching of the manifesto, so it's going to be a nice thick book.
What we can expect
Details.
too is a reader-friendly version
Yeah,
of the
okay, of
manifesto as we
course.
come closer and closer to the elections.
For the people that want to get into the more technical nitty-gritty, there's going to be one of those available, because I know we're probably going to sit down and go through and be like, okay.
Yeah, so as the program progresses and as we hear from time to time, we'll continue to bring you more
Snippets.
updates and snippets from our manifesto.
I think one last
And
one though I want
as
to
we
say
go on. Yeah, sure.
is a part of it is one of the ones we've seen too is make home ownership affordable, because we should point out not a single new house lot was given out under this new government.
Exactly.
So there's a lot of people that are like young people that are now starting their careers. They have some money saved up, but they can't afford it, because we were looking at real estate the other day, and places in Georgetown are like 1.1 million US dollars.
Yes, very scary what's going on there.
Yeah.
So we know the PP track record as it relates to issues
Creating
and
house lots and
house
so
lots
on.
and all of that. In fact, and it's very important that you mentioned that the government has never, they have so far not given out a single house lot, but rather they have repossessed house lots from Core Home, which is Core Homes was a project started by the PPC administration where they give to single parents and those in need and those with that needed assistance from
But
the
we see
state.
people like Annette Ferguson who moved from a modest home to an extravagant home.
Well, it wasn't even her home; she was renting.
Oh,
Yes, she
Oh.
was renting what Nalini calls a wooden building upstairs somewhere in Georgetown, and then moved to this huge
a mansion.
facility
Yeah.
in just a matter of 4 years.
Yeah. And I'm sure there's building time that we didn't really like account for and realize was hers and so on.
And on that note, we'd just like to move in briefly to the AP and UAFC failures.
Yeah.
Clearly, that
That-
is one of their biggest failures
Well,
to deliver
I
their
mean,
promises.
it was her success, because now she's like living in a much more good life kind
And
of
as we
thing.
keep pointing out, there's only a few that benefits from
Yeah.
this government. The few that are there, they are the ones that benefit. But ordinary Guyanese can't seem to.
Well, there's a lot of
live
wasteful
for.
spending. Like the projects they put forward, the way they spend the money on themselves, it's just a lot of wasteful spending. This week alone, the government announced that there'll be a commemorative ceremony for the 1823rd Damara Revolt on Sunday, September 8th. So there's a new monument that they want to recommission. So if you look at the screen, you can see where they're going to launch this create a new groundbreaking ceremony for at Parade Ground, which is a total waste of money. We already have one of these in existence. Why are we going to then?
Yeah, we have, you can look on the screen there, that's the 1823 monument that we
Yeah,
have
it's
on the
lovely,
seawalls already.
actually.
Very well done, very nice creation. But this government is going to waste more of our taxpayers' money and do another monument,
To the 1823
1823 monument, this
Revolt.
time in
Parade Ground. Maybe it's a location they like. That's really nice by the seawalls. I've actually had lunch out there one time. It was kind of hot, but like.
So that is what we've been saying. This government don't seem to care about Guyanese. I mean, these are monies that can be used somewhere else or put towards some other use. Or
Give the school children $10,000.
or give the student. No, but we're concerned with building monuments, building arches, and that's all. Building around the boat.
Building our homes.
Yes.
Getting more food, as you said. They're eating more in the government. They're doing a lot more like.
More importantly, the cabinet continues to function, although it's very clear that the cabinet should have resigned. The cabinet, including the president, that is,
Wait,
should have
what are they
resigned.
calling themselves now? A plenary or
No, they're still a cabinet.
Oh, they didn't
They-
switch their
no,
names back?
they didn't. They didn't switch their name back this time. They're still a cabinet. They still continue to meet. They still continue to function. The last post-cabinet press briefing that we had announced that over $1 billion in contract was awarded.
And that was in a week, right? You were telling me it was like
That
1
was
week
within a
of
1 week period.
Yeah.
They awarded over $1
I
billion.
think you said 1.1 or something.
Yeah, $1 billion in contract. But now, as time has progressed, the cabinet continues to meet on a weekly basis, but there have been no press briefings. So we don't know what's happening. We don't know what they're doing. We don't know if they're handing out contracts or to who they're handing out contracts or if they're spending money or what exactly is taking place. And
we don't know what they're doing is basically it.
Basically,
They're probably just signing a whole bunch of contracts and doing their own thing, and we have no idea, and there's no way of holding them accountable at this time because Parliament's can't meet. So we have an unaccountable government that's not transparent, that is wasting the taxpayer dollars.
On that note, I'd just like to remind that Monday, the 9th of September, there is a case filed by attorneys Manoj Narayan and others. The case is Mohabi Rani Nandlal versus the Attorney General, where he
forced him to resign.
Yes, he is asking the High Court to give certain orders compelling the cabinet, including the president, to resign in accordance with Article 106.6 of the Constitution. That case is coming up for hearing on Monday.
So hopefully we get a quick judgment from that. But what's sad is that we have to force them to court for every single thing.
Exactly.
Like there is no transparency, there's nothing. There is no accountability of nothing with them. So we see the trend of no transparency keep happening. We also see them continuing to mislead Guyanese people on several matters. They're constantly saying one thing, doing the other, or saying one thing and then reversing it and continuing onwards.
What is very worrying for me though, Nalini, is the fact that there's this whisper campaign that has started again, where we see key figures, ministers, activists of the coalition government going into certain communities, and they've been spreading falsehood and spreading rumors and trying to stir up racism.
Well, I think that ties in with the use of Chronicle to bring up this whole crime wave spree. So they're further...
the troubles the president likes to refer to, the troubles period, or the dark days, as the president would refer to it.
He
the
forgot about the
president.
Martin Carter poem. So they're further dividing people with this. They're playing this race card thing a little too often and misleading on reality. So a big thing, though, is about the troubled time was that the Leader of the Opposition has constantly called on there to be a COI, and they're just not doing it. So why not have a COI? So you can say, okay, this was because of this, not speculation and this whisper campaign, as you're saying, because you're just making the population turn on each other. You're dividing your own people.
And there's nothing to gain from this.
No.
But they...
just strife and grief.
Yeah, but they have nothing to bring to the people. They have broken all their promises.
The only thing they can do is rile them up again, create a common enemy so they vote for them. That's how all dictators work.
That's exactly what we were saying.
We saw Hitler do that, right? He turned the Germans against the Jews, and he things. So let's not fall for their tricks. So we call on everyone to really call out for a COI. If they come and tell you about the trouble time, be like, oh, do you have that as an investigative piece? Can you get some real evidence? And then we can speak about it.
And of course, we see now that the APNUFC has joined the PPP basically, or they have now realized what we have been calling for all along, and saying that, oh, claims and objections will register first-time voters and address several other matters, and house-to-house registration was not needed.
But no, they had to push for house-to-house to get some time, right?
It's all about delaying. It's clear. It's clear for everyone to see, because they have switched drastically
they said
now to claims and objection is the best
wasn't good enough. Then it was gonna disenfranchise these young voters. When we need these young voters to go out there and vote, so we need the house-to-house, which, if done properly, would have been a few more years. So now that that's squashed, they're like, oh, no, the young voters can vote, claims and objections.
You can still get registered if you didn't get registered during the house.
They don't want to lose any votes, right? So now you see the truth in them.
At this point, I'd just like to point out that, in early March of 2019, the People's Progressive Party nominated commissioners at GCOM would have put forward a plan to the commission from since then to hold elections within a 50-day period, which cater for an extensive claims and objections period. Of course,
well, that's what they're calling for now, though, an extensive one.
Of course, we have heard nothing about this. And had this actually been put into place, and the APNUFC would have, and they knew this all along, that the claims and objections would have taken care of all these if you want to say fears that anyone would have, or anyone
It
that was
regulates,
not
it
on the
sanitize
register.
the list. That's what it does. Sanitize the list. Because you can object to any dead person, and you can claim to put yourself on the list and claim a transfer or anything of the sort. But so if they had done this,
Within the 50-day, go ahead with that plan, we would have had elections about 3 months ago, and the nations could have moved forward because
so we'd have settled this whole no confidence motion business.
Yeah, exactly, because the political uncertainty continues to loom over Guyana,
Yes.
not only for within the political arena, which
It affects investors, because you saw it at these conferences. People are saying the political uncertainty of Guyana leads to investors being fearful. Because who wants to invest in a country where one day your dollar is valued at 200 and then the next day it might be valued at 0? Or there's like a civil war or something of the sort happens. So you're just...
Yes, very important. And then for businesses locally here as well, there's no certainty, so they don't know, should we
Some
bring
people are just
stuff in?
closing down now, though. You're seeing more and more businesses closing their doors.
And just laying
that's-
off staff, which
exactly.
is contributing
To the unemployment, which causes less money, and economics, it's a circle. So if you have less money, then you're out.
Yeah, so we surely hope that at Friday's meeting of the Guyana Elections Commission, there can be some sort of decision as to the way forward. We can get some good news.
Hopefully like a timeline, and they present this to the president so he can then call for an election.
Definitely.
Which the buck does stop with him. He is the head of state, so he does need to call for an election.
He's the one responsible to set a date.
Exactly.
Well, he's issue a proclamation, then set a date for the election
Dissolve
and dissolve the
parliament
parliament.
and so forth,
Yeah. So our operator is signaling to us that we are almost out of time. So
let's, we'd like to thank everyone for joining us for the past hour. And just a reminder to the viewers, you can find our program on our Facebook page, This Week in 60 Minutes, where you can watch it at any time. So if you've missed any part of this program, please join us on Facebook anytime and watch our program. It's This Week in 60 Minutes. So share the link with friends and family if you think they would enjoy this. Thank you for having us tonight.
So just a quick conclusion for those of you who may be now joining us.
So they can know what they can tune in back to.
Exactly. We dealt extensively with GCOM and the fact that they have made no decision thus far. We've dealt with the timeline, and we've pointed out with figures how is it that the house-to-house registration is flawed from our point of view, and we gave the example of Lagrange where they claim that they have registered 21,172 persons within that area, and we give the figures, so you can just go back and look at that. We also dealt with the promises and the plan of the PPPC if re-elected or when re-elected into office in the coming period. Also, just a reminder for these information and many, many other more information as it pertains to the People's Progressive Party and what's taking place in our country, you can find that in the Mirror newspaper, the Weekend Mirror. You can get a copy of that countrywide, and it's also available online every Monday on Facebook at Weekend Mirror. That's the Facebook page. So get a copy of the Mirror, and of course, you'd be kept up to date with what's going on in Guyana. On that note, we'd like to thank you for joining us. Have a good evening, and see you guys next week. Thank you.